Câți dintre noi chiar au stat de vorbă cu un refugiat? Probabil că sunt în minoritate cei care au avut răbdarea să cunoască un străin. De regulă apare ezitarea, iar asta se datorează fricii de necunoscut. Pe aceeași frică se bazează și cei care îi găsesc vinovați pe refugiați de toate relele dintr-o țară. Se insistă pe ideea că dacă nu este de-al nostru, atunci este rău. Dacă am fi puțin curioși să descoperim lumea, am vedea că oamenii de diferite nații au în comun mai multe decât am putea crede. Pablo Zapata este reprezentantul UNHCR în România, el însuși un fost refugiat. Vorbim împreună despre nevoia de ne cunoaște puțin mai bine. Sunt Cristina Cileacu, începe Pașaport diplomatic. Pablo Zapata, you an ACR representative in Romania. Welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Pablo, on the 20th of June, it was the World Refugee Day, and the term used for this day is commemoration.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, it's a day marked by or decided by the General Assembly to commemorate the situation of refugees, and it's commemoration and not celebration because it's not a happy event. We are not celebrating that there are refugees. We're basically acknowledging that this is a harsh reality that continues, not only continues, but keeps on growing and growing in the world, and that we are needed, all of us are needed, to address this deep injustice that represents to be away from one's home because of violence or persecution.
Does running away from war means to have courage, or you run away because you are afraid, or is just instinct to survive?
Well, independently of the reason, the personal reason why one runs away, the fact is that the international community has decided to protect these persons. And the motivations may be many. Normally there is not just one. I've interviewed many refugees in my life. And it's not just one reason, it's a number of reasons, and it depends on so many factors. It depends on one's history, it depends on what the other people around me are doing, it depends on what I think should do better, not maybe necessarily for me, but also for my children. There is a number of considerations, and we see that everywhere in the world, and in the case of Romania, more recently with the Ukrainian refugees, is not different.
And do you think that in Romania, the Ukrainian refugees, of course we did hear quite a lot about how well the Romanian people welcome the refugees, but lately we do hear that some Romanians are taking advantage of the Ukrainian refugees and don't necessarily give them the money that the Romanian state is sharing for the Ukrainian refugees. Do you think this is still a welcome, or it's rather a business?
No, it is very much a welcome. The cases of business, I would say, are specific and sporadic. Let's see a little bit the figures that we have. There is still, about 3.7 million Ukrainians have come through and to Romania, either directly from Ukraine or through the Republic of Moldova. Out of these 3.7, there is 137,000 that have benefited from documentation, from temporary protection in Romania. And out of them, there is 95,000 present in the country as of last week. And if you see their composition, it's still 80% women and children and 20% men. 1 in 10 households have an elderly person, part of them, and so on. During a long time, the government of Romania supported Romanian citizens who were welcoming refugees in their houses or in the houses they had, both with an assigned amount for rent and an assigned amount for food. Of those, the rent, according to the surveys we have done, refugees were not reporting any abuse there. With regards to the food, it was a bit more complex, the situation. And about 1 in 3 persons said that either they would not receive the money or not receive the food, etc. So there, that part.
Because the Romanian side is taking the money, or what's
it is unclear the reasons. We were just asking about the fact. And then, of course, we have all seen in media some investigations and some cases of persons, and yes, those definitely would abuse if the findings of the investigations are those. that they were abusing. But the large majority of persons have extended incredible and generous welcome to refugees. What we see these days, more than that, is that there are some narratives taking hold of some people, not of the majority, but of some people, around why are they here so long, or do they really want to work, or these kind of narratives. And that makes the response a little bit, or make refugees feel not definitely welcome, but they feel that there is, some of them feel that there are some questions about their stay in the country. So they feel obliged in a way to retribute in kind and to show very well and very much their integration processes.
Well, refugees are often blamed for a lot of things that don't work well in a country. As you said, narratives are developing. On the other side, sometimes they become really commodities for traffickers. UNHCR is protecting them. But then again, this is a mission that has to take care of millions of people worldwide. Do you think it's a mission of success, or is just something the best you can do?
Well, I would like to think that it's a mission destined to success. Now, the issue is not so much the response for refugees, which it has its complexities, and I can comment a little bit about that, but also the number of new conflicts that are driving people out of their homes. So when I started in UNHCR, the figure of 20 million was something we couldn't even think that was going to come, and it came. And now not only 20 million, but at the end of last year, 108 million persons had been displaced. By now, our estimation is that it's over 110 million because of the recent crisis, including Sudan, for instance. And the point, and I'm quoting here, or I'm referring to what the High Commissioner Filippo Grandi mentioned, says some people are too quick to rush into war, and then not so quick in rushing into solving the conflicts. If you see the number of refugees in the world, just the solution of 3 conflicts would reduce the number of refugees to the half. And those are Syria, Ukraine, and Afghanistan. So if there were successful processes of conditions for the people to return in safety and dignity and with due guarantees, you would see that the figures are moving in the right direction downwards. Unfortunately, the number of persons who returned last year, which is about 6 million, about 5.7 million of the persons internally displaced, which means that they have left because of war or persecution their homes but have not crossed an international border, and about 350,000 refugees returning, does not compensate for the new displacement that conflicts, old or new, are causing.
Well, as you said, the majority of the refugees are coming from those 3 wars, Syria, Ukraine and Afghanistan. These people are in various countries, mostly in the neighborhood countries around their locations, and they are there to stay, because these wars, if we take the Syrian conflict, it's the year 13 of war. Ukraine is first year and a half. Afghanistan, officially the war is over, but the situation there is even worse than during the war. Do the countries that actually host these refugees and offer them asylum understand that these people are there to stay for a very long time?
Well, I think as many other things with displacement, these are gradual processes. I have also worked in conflicts where there was a rapid departure from the country and a rapid return. I worked in Albania during the Kosovo crisis, and there we could see a massive exodus of Kosovars, and then a very massive, almost complete return. And that was because the time between the beginning of the peak part, I would say, of the conflict, because the conflicts normally come from a longer time, and the resolution are close in time. So there is, of course, even at the human level, a situation where the longer you stay out, the more difficult then is to return, because then you start generating links with the country that is welcome you. You begin to make your life. This year, and you were making reference to the World Refugee Day, this year's theme that we invited people to think about is hope away from home. So refugees normally come with dreams shattered and hope non-existent in many ways, and they don't know what they will find in the country that is welcoming them. As they rebuild their lives, as they find new meaning, as they find new hope, then you tend to feel that that country is your country. If I can add a personal experience, we left my native Chile. I was a little boy with the family after the coup d'etat, and then we were returning with part of my family 6 years later. But if it would have been, and I was 12 years old, then a few years later I wouldn't have probably liked to go back, because then Spain was my country and Chile was a distant memory, if you will, or the land of my parents, etc. So there are different affections, different elements that make us take decisions about returning. In the case of Romania, still the large majority, over 80% of them, 81% to be clear about the intentions of return that we have, say that as the conditions improve, they would like to return to Ukraine. And if I may add, also the geographical position of Romania in this case is meaningful, in the sense that refugees who may probably think that this would take longer time, etc., would have moved farther, even to Spain or to France or to the UK, to other countries. But people remaining in Romania or in other border countries to Ukraine have an expectation to return, have the possibility to go back and see how their houses are, how their family members are, visiting the elder parents that maybe didn't want or couldn't go out of the country, and so on.
Do you think that the Ukrainian refugees still living in Romania are well integrated, because of course language is a huge barrier, and on the other hand Romania still needs a lot of people to work?
Yes.
So how is this two things going together?
The matchmaking.
The matchmaking, exactly,
yes.
Yeah.
So indeed, work is a key driver to integration. But work, and you hinted to one of these elements, requires two additional elements to work, what I call a triangle. Work needs to be paired with language acquisition and needs to be paired with childcare or schooling for the children. If any of these angles of the triangle does not move or is more resistance, then there is more resistance to the overall process of being included in the society. So indeed, work is available in Romania, maybe sometimes not for the exact profile of the people who came from Ukraine. Just to give you an idea, about 70 to 80% of those adults who came here had completed higher education or university studies. Back home. Yeah. Of them, half of all the adults arriving were already working in Ukraine. And now, between 35 and 40% of the refugees are already working in the country or remotely working with their previous jobs in Ukraine or elsewhere. So, but then in order to work in the Romanian labor market, if you will, language acquisition remains fundamental. And there, I would say, we as international actors, in support of the national response, in the support of the government, we can do more. The latest figures we have is that among the UN agencies, NGOs with whom we work coordinated under the Refugee Response Plan, there is about 3,500 persons, refugees enrolled currently in courses, language courses. In the case of UNHCR, by the month of July or August, we are adding about 4,000 to 5,000 persons to that figure, because we understand that without that element, it is not possible. But at the same time, if you see the figures of enrollment of children in a school, thanks also to the incentives provided in the new assistance package by the government, the number has gone from about 6,000 to 24,000 children already enrolled in Romanian schools, expecting to start those classes either as auditors or full-fledged in the month of September.
But won't it be a problem if those kids don't speak Romanian? How will they learn in Romania?
Well, what the Romanian educational system establishes is that, and we have seen this for kids from other nationalities as well, we're talking about Afghan or Syrian kids who have integrated, the first year you attend as an auditor. Basically, you are there to learn the language, to see the dynamics. There, sometimes it's not enough just to be an auditor, because you may simply not have a clue of what is going around you. There are things that eventually we could try to support better with training for teachers to teach Romanian as a second language, which is different than
as a foreign language.
As a foreign language that will allow you, or will allow the kids to have a more meaningful time in the school. For instance, now we have been following a little bit many cases, but there is one case of a child called Danil who has been so far attending remotely classes in the Ukrainian system online, that has been engaged with one of the organizations we support in social environment, so that he's not isolated at home, just basically interacting with the screen, and he is going to go to school in September. Now, he's quite nervous about it, and his family is quite nervous about it, and he has seen that one element that he will have to make new friends is through chess. He loves chess. He plays chess, so he's looking forward to find new friends with whom to play chess with. And like that, you have thousands and thousands of examples. So now it is a matter of numbers, it is a matter of finding the space, but it's also the human touch and how kids will react to kids, and teachers will accompany their learning process.
As we said, most of the refugees from the current war in the world are choosing a country in immediate vicinities for getting asylum. Then again, these countries are usually weaker economies. Rarely refugees manage to get in large numbers in countries with strong economies. But the rhetoric against refugees are coming exactly from those countries with strong economies.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Let me give you a personal note on this. So between 2015 and mid-2017, I worked in Syria, in Damascus. It was a tough period, particularly for the people in Syria, but also as humanitarian workers. It was demanding. And then in 2016, 2015, 2016 was the so-called emergency in Europe. And the emergency in Europe was more or less about 1 million persons coming. So our caseload, or the number of persons we serve inside Syria, in the area where I was working with, which is called protection, was 7.6 million persons. And the overall number of persons in need was over 13 million persons that we would serve collectively as humanitarian actors inside Syria. So there is a lot about perspective and distortion. So countries, as you will say, who are border countries, 76% of the persons, of the refugees, stay in countries of low or middle income. So there is this fantasy that all want to come, or that all are here, or that we are being invited. If you look at figures, as many times happens with misinformation, they don't stand the sunlight, and they fade away. But the point is that they build on fears of persons. They build on anecdotal information. Did you see this? Did you see that? Have you heard this? And lots of it is spread through social media with no possibility of fact-checking. So something we're doing in UNHCR here in Romania is we're launching a public campaign. And one of the objectives of the public campaign is to add facts to the discussion and to put the discussion in the right context, showing on the one hand how grateful are refugees. Some people may, and we have heard this recently more and more, refugees are not grateful for what we have been giving them. But the person saying this probably have not met a refugee ever. And we who work with refugees and our partners and a lot of grassroots society organizations, and a lot of public officials from local governments, from central government, when you talk to them, the first thing that comes is a big thanks. It's mulțumesc. And so for us, one of the elements is how to transmit this at a social level. On the other hand, how to demystify some of these false narratives that are going around society. And
like refugees invade us, refugees take our jobs, refugees attack us, refugees are going to, I don't know, kill us all and conquer the country.
Yeah, those are the very, very extreme that you're saying, and indeed they are baseless. And if you see in the case of Ukrainians and non-Ukrainians in Romania. They are people seeking to contribute. They are people trying to seek a job, trying to learn the language, trying to enroll their kids in a school. And so we also want to portray their journey towards inclusion. So Romania has done a great effort, not only at the society or whole of society effort, as this has been said by the government in the past, but also with adopting laws. We're trying to adopt systems. The plan of measures for the protection and inclusion was the first one in Europe. The emergency response was, as I tend to say sometimes, it was effective, efficient and deeply humane. So we need to take these elements and to see where we are at now in the process of accompanying refugees. And in our case, our role is to support national and local authorities in this journey. And in the process of doing that, we need to show also the efforts that refugees are putting into this. Refugees who had a life, another
before,
of the... yeah, absolutely.
At home.
For instance, one of the refugees that some people will see in the campaign had a beautiful pharmacy in Kherson. And now she's here, she's working and she's learning the language. And she's working in a place that has to do with her profession, but at the same time she's learning the language in order to advance in her profession. So it is this dual effort of I study in the mornings and then I work until very, very late hours in very distant places, because I want to make it, because I need to make it for my families. Before we were talking about the multiple reasons why people decide to leave. And there are multiple reasons why people feel the urge to be included and to integrate. The first time always in a refugee situation, in the life of a refugee, is, and this is a word that we keep on hearing from refugees here, is like a fog. You are in a fog. You don't see clearly left or right. You think and you wish and all your being screams for returning as soon as possible home. So mentally even, you don't take the necessary steps to assume that this may be longer than you want. And we wouldn't like it to be longer than it needs to be. But then at some point comes the realization of, while I am here, I will make the best out of it. I will contribute in the best way that I can.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții. La revedere!